Hi, I'm Scott at ediblemusic.com. If you've got the BX Opto compressor plugin, maybe it came as part of a bundle that you purchased with your interface, or you just picked it up on its own, I want to help you get the most out of it because despite the fact that it is modeled similar to how optical compressors will usually work, things like an LA2A or an LA3A that you might already have a bit of familiarity with, it also contains some really interesting differences that will help you get the most out of it. So I want first to show you what it has in common with them, which are these two large knobs here, the peak reduction and the output. And if you've used an LA2A style compressor, you'll know that's basically the controls that you've got for them. You've got the compression that you want to apply, the peak reduction, and then the output gain that you want to apply. Same deal here. You would adjust your peak reduction and your output to provide some makeup gain. But then things get really interesting with this bottom row of knobs here, starting with the speed knob. Most optical compressors will have a variable release where if there's a lot of compression happening, it might let go fairly quickly, but then the rest of the way down, it might actually slow down. So the release at the top might be fairly quick, but then it'll be a lot slower as it comes down. Here you can adjust that so you can speed up the release. And that will make it more useful if you're working with like drums, for example, or a triangle. If you've watched some of my other stuff, you know that I like triangles. Now, at the other end is the mix knob where you can insert the plugin, but you can turn the mix down so that you're getting some solidity to the program element while also allowing its dynamics to be retained. In the middle are the sidechain features, and what this does is that it specifies for the compressor when to begin applying compression. It doesn't filter out those frequencies by any means, but it can help to focus frequencies so that the compressor will respond to those, and it will then compress the whole signal, of course. But if you want the compressor to respond more to, say, if you were to use it on drums, you could have it respond more to the hi-hats or to the hardware on the drum kit rather than to the kick drum or the snare. And you can get some different compression effects coming out depending upon how you set that sidechain filter. I'll show you a little bit about all of this as we go. Let's start with it on vocals.
Já faz algum tempo que eu não te vejo. Me bateu saudade daquele teu beijo. Me perco nas memórias. Me lembro das histórias que sempre te contei. Já faz algum tempo que eu não te vejo.
Okay, so with that compression applied, it opens up the higher frequencies a little bit. Now, if we adjust the speed, if I slow it down quite a lot, it'll just be a consistent compression throughout. But if you were to increase the speed,
que sempre te contei.
Then the vocal begins to feel a little bit more dynamic because the compressor is letting go a little bit more quickly than it otherwise would with a usual optical compression characteristic.
Daquele teu beijo, me perco nas memórias, me lembro das histórias que sempre te contei.
Let's switch to seeing how it sounds on the bass. And here we'll introduce some of the sidechain characteristics. So we'll get some compression going. Here too, if we increase the speed, then it'll give a bit of a greater sense of groove to the bass. As opposed to keeping the signal very steadily compressed and kind of locked in. Here, with a faster speed, you can hear the groove kind of coming back up again before the compressor is engaged once more. Now, if we introduce the sidechain, there are 4 filters here. There's a low pass, high pass, And then there are two band filters, one that's fairly wide and one that's fairly narrow. So we'll start with it on the low cut filter, and we'll bring it up. I'll turn it on and off to compare as well. And I'd like you to focus just on the lower frequencies of the bass. When the sidechain is off, it's usually those frequencies that are causing it to begin engaging. But with the filter, it's letting those frequencies kind of scoot past the sensor of the compressor. And that enables those lower frequencies to feel a little looser, a little more open. Cool. Here it is as well with the band passes. Try to find a good spot to situate those. You can also solo it so that you can hear what part of the program element is triggering the compressor. Let's go way up there to where the fingers, the action of the fingers on the strings are going to be what is causing the compression more. The band passes might not have as frequent use for you, but the low cut and the high cut certainly will. So it's worth exploring with those. Now, I mentioned that optical compressors usually aren't used on drums very often, but because we have these adjustable controls for the release, I expect that the BX Opto would be pretty useful, at least on a kind of a slow song or a mid-tempo song. This song is indeed a mid-tempo song, so let's see how it sounds on the drums, and maybe we can get it to sound nice. So what we want to be able to do here is to maintain the dynamics of the drums while applying this compression. Okay, so with the speed at default there, right in the center, you can see that the needle isn't dropping all the way back down to 0, which is okay, but the drums are drum loops so that there's not a lot of dynamic variation in them. And so applying compression to drum loops is more about emphasizing dynamics and emphasizing grooves rather than trying to even everything out. So we'll increase the speed to get that needle dropping down lower. Let's try it all the way up. Let's introduce the sidechain as well here. We'll try to have it to allow the kick drum to pass by. Cool. And if you were to do a lot of compression, say if we were to slow this all the way down, now the compression is engaged pretty much all the time, but you can drop the mix down. Here it is with none. And as I increase the mix, you'll hear that that part of the signal starts to come up and act as a support to the rest of the drum kit. A lot of flexibility to the BX Opto, more so than you would normally find with other optical compressor style plugins. I think that the speed control is really useful here, especially because if you were to want to apply it to guitars or bass guitar or vocals like we saw, then you can still use it, of course, to have that nice form of compression that just evens things out as much as you need it to. But with the release control, then it also allows the compressor to maintain the characteristics that optical compressors usually have, but also to adjust the release times so that the compression can have a bit more of an effect on the groove and the dynamics of the program element that you're working on. Try it out.